Royal Editor of Vanity Fair, Katie Nicholl, who's here. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, here's one for you. I hope this doesn't sound controversial.
Go on.
I didn't think I would particularly enjoy the concert, and I loved it.
So did I. I think, you know what, we're all very British about this, because when you look back at the coverage about the concert, it was all a bit wet, it was all a bit drab, it was all, well, we haven't got Elton John, we haven't got Ed Sheeran. We didn't, but do you know what? It didn't matter, because it was a brilliant lineup. The drone display was wonderful. We didn't see the royals dancing on the ceiling, but we saw them dancing in the royal box, and they were pretty fantastic. I've done lots of concerts. I've never seen them really get up and bopping like that. And,
no, the Duchess of Edinburgh.
I was just going to say, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, she was really going for it. And how wonderful to see them having such a good night. And I spoke to someone close to the King this morning. I said, well, how is he feeling? Because he did a pre-concert party, an after-party, did that skit for American Idol. You know, brilliant. The source said, exhausted, ... knackered. And I was like, do you know, I'm not surprised.
No.
They need a good rest now, because it has been a pretty epic weekend for them. And of course, on Saturday, the day that he's waited his entire life for. You imagine the emotional energy that goes into a day like that. But I think overall it has been a great success. And as you say, it continues today with the big help out.
Absolutely. It's been a massive success. And it's interesting when you touch upon the emotion of it, because there must be so much emotion for the King, especially in those family moments, especially Prince William last night speaking of his pa and saying how proud his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, would have been. It was perfect.
It was one of those sort of spine-tingling moments, really got you. And I think, you know, the Prince of Wales has had a very central role in all of this. I mean, he swore allegiance to his father, the King, in front of us all on Saturday. That pledge to be his liege man of life and limb, echoing the words of his grandfather, who made that same pledge to the Queen at her coronation, echoing his words to his mother at his own investiture, Charles's investiture I'm talking about. And so for me, within that whole ceremony, the coronation, it was almost like an investiture of the Prince of Wales as well.
Yes,
we're not
feel
having
like
that
that
ancient ceremony, but it felt that way. And then to see it in a more informal and, as you say, Ellie, sort of familial way on stage was absolutely lovely. And I think he spoke for the nation, really, not just the royal family. I think people do feel very proud of Charles. And Stephen, we were just talking about it on air, just before we went on air, about I think people have really come round to understand the man who is now our king. I hope so, because I think he's a good man with genuine intentions, and he is a king in a hurry, because he's got a lot to do in what's likely to be, he's 75, a relatively short period of time.
She's talking sort of 20 years, aren't you, sort of thing. I know it sounds a bit grim, but that's the reality of the situation.
Yes, and I think, you know, before everyone takes the bunting down and we sort of start dissecting every bit of it, enjoy this moment. We should enjoy it as a country, because it's going to be a very long time before we get that bunting out again. I mean, you only get a jubilee when you've celebrated 25 years on the throne. We know there's longevity in those Windsor genes, but the chances of Charles having a silver jubilee are probably unlikely. What will the next be? Will it be George's wedding? Will it be the coronation of King William? You know, it's going to be a while. I think we're going to see some big international tours. We're going to see the royals on the international stage, very busy, and the King getting back to work. But I think a bit of a rest before then.
Yeah.
What has the impact of this weekend been, do you think? Because Britain, and indeed the British royal family, was taken centre stage across the world.
I think it's hard to put into words the impact. I mean, when I think of those pictures of the street party yesterday at Downing Street with Jill Biden and the Prime Minister, you know, you can't put a price on that when you're thinking about the international relations and what that has forged, the Commonwealth and the representation that they had. We know there's a big question about the future of the Commonwealth and what it's going to look like. But I think the royal family can ride on a tide of goodwill for now. But the hard work starts. It never really stopped. But they really do have to prove what they do and show us that they are in touch with us. Well, I think you see that through the likes of William, and that they're doing good work and that they're vital, because we need to see that. And I think, you know, most people are behind the monarchy. All the polls suggested that 2/3 of us would rather have them than not have them. But I still think there's a lot to be done.
Do you know what feels nice is that, because often we feel embarrassed to be patriotic, particularly in England, and it's a very odd situation. I feel so patriotic, and proudly so, And we should really embrace that, shouldn't we?
I absolutely think we should. I think there's been a lot of putting Britain down and, just thinking there's been a lot of negative headlines. And actually, yesterday and over this weekend, we have been centre stage. We show what we do best. You were talking earlier about the military position. I think very hard to watch that and not feel a great sense of pride in our armed forces. And I think hard to watch this weekend and not feel a sense of pride in the royal family.
And the causes that they work so hard for as well. I mean, that was certainly a focus last night, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And at the coronation, within that congregation, the number of ordinary people, NHS workers, that wonderful choir that was formed of just regular singers around the country getting to perform in front of the world. When you think back to the King as the Prince of Wales, the first thing he did when he left the Royal Navy was to set up the Prince's Trust, to give young people a rung on the ladder, to give them a voice. And he continues to do that as King. And I think it's a very powerful message to
Can I just
out.
say as well, one of the best moments, I know I've mentioned this before, but the fact that Floella Benjamin, Baroness Benjamin, played a key role, and I know that's all to do with diversity and inclusion, that's a key part of it, but actually for me she's one of those people who of my generation influenced a whole generation of preschoolers.
Absolutely.
She was the first blackface I ever saw, ever, and that didn't register with me. But she has played a key part in my early years' development.
Absolutely.
And to see that, from her doing that, to playing a key role in the coronation, I just find that overwhelming.
It was wonderful, and she must have been absolutely delighted. And I think just making that point on diversity, but also the inclusion of women.
Yes.
To have 2 female bishops involved, to have so many women involved in that ceremony, and Penny Mordaunt there with her sword. How wonderful. It had all of the ancient ceremony that you would expect of a coronation. But it had that wonderful touch of modernity, and I think at the heart said so much about the reign of King Charles III. It is about service, it is about diversity, it is about multi-faiths, it is about inclusion.
Love it. I could honestly, I can feel myself going again. It's terrible.
Don't. Hold it together.
Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.